Good morning, Veronica. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing well. And you?
Pretty good. I can just see the top of your hairband, though.
Okay, I'm gonna fix it.
Okay. You don't have to. I mean, it's just funny, kind of talking to people, and all you see is like, from like their forehead up. You know, you know
Yeah,
they're, they're there, but you know
yeah. So
what?
have you heard anything from the Fulton County, particularly all the senior centers? Are they gonna shift in a different direction because of the variant?
Well, yes. From what I understand, um, August 2nd, they were going to open up to a limited number of people being on site and begin to have a few, not many, but a few, like, on site classes. And I think the idea was that they would only have like one on site class
Right.
in one of the departments at a time. Okay. So if you had a fitness class, you were not going to have an art class.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they really want to keep it down to a very low number of people in that building. Now, how that has shifted, I'm not really sure. I don't really know what they're going to end up doing
Okay.
at this point, because I mean, I think, like everybody else, they're trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's like, is it safe? I mean, they have people coming to the center now, um, but it's very restricted. You got a 30-minute window that
Right.
you have to actually sign up for an exercise class, and it's you and one other person in the gym. That's it. You know, there's no more than that. And then when you get finished in the gym, depending on when you schedule time for, you can go by and you can pick up a lunch, but you have to take it home. You know, they don't
Yeah.
want anybody eating, there on the premises or anything like that. So it's they're really not promoting or advocating the idea of social contact right now.
I mean, it's understandable. I mean, I get it.
Yeah, and some people are a little I guess upset about that, and just want everything to like go back to the way it was. But under the circumstances, you know, I think they're doing the best they can, and they're trying to be cautious. And I would much personally, and this is my personal opinion, it's not county policy or anything like that, but you know, I actually applaud them for the fact that they're moving very slowly and cautiously, because
I,
there's a
I I agree with that.
yeah, because believe me, I think there's enormous pressure out there, for them to just throw the doors open and everybody to just sort of go back, well, this is life as normal, right? And go back to what they were doing.
Right.
There's tons of people who would love to do that, you know. It
Yeah.
yeah, it wouldn't be a good choice though. Um,
No.
I
I'm thinking that those individuals who want everything to go back to as it was before,
mhm.
they're probably very lonely.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
yeah,
it's it's loneliness and it's missing classes because initially I wanted to go back, but then when I heard about the Delta virus, I
mhm.
thought, oh no, if I go, I just run in and run out, you know. So, but
Right. With your
but
mask.
but
Yeah.
I have you, Veronica, so I'm not lonely.
Oh, and I have you, Bernice, and everyone else in class, because these classes are really a lifeline, I
Yes.
believe. Definitely inspirational. And I know that, you know, unless it's absolutely necessary for me to miss it, I
Me
try
too.
not
Me
to.
too.
And
Mhm.
everyone in my circle knows, oh, wait a minute, she in that art class, she's not going to answer you.
Well,
So don't
I'm
even
glad.
try it.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you guys are enjoying it, and you know, because that's important. You know, that it's something to look forward to.
And I get my
Um,
exercise in the morning too on these Zoom classes.
mhm, yeah, yeah.
Well, you
Actually,
got one up on me, Bernice. My exercise is to the coffee maker, and that's it.
yeah. Hey, Armando.
Good
Armando's got.
morning, everybody.
Hey, Armando. Hi, John.
Morning.
Betty is here too.
Okay. Does I think just about everybody who's online right now was here last week. We had somebody join us briefly. Michael Harper,
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Remember that.
or Halpner was his last name. He's actually the executive director of Atria here in Atlanta, which is
Director
a
of what?
Atria, which is like a senior community
Oh, okay.
over like in, you know, they've got one in Buckhead, but they've got several around the Atlanta metro area, but they're all across the country. You know, they're a huge organization, and it's senior living,
Hmm.
you know, like independent living facilities. And, you know, he kind of sat in and observed the class. I didn't know who he was, you know, when he showed up, but he introduced himself, which was nice. But you know, one of the things that they're looking at in my conversation with him is, you know, they're looking at, you know, how do they move forward? You know, how are they going to model some of the things that they're going to offer at their facilities, you know, to their residents and participants, you know, in the future. And it's like, you know, how can they have classes and things like that? So this, you know, being able to observe what we do was very helpful to him, and that was good because, again, you know, it's like different people in, you know, if you want to call this an industry, um, you know, which it is actually, uh, you know, being able to physically see, you know, people participating in classes and seeing the interaction, stuff like that is very, you know, it's very inspiring. It gets them over a lot of the preconceived ideas that they had about how limited this could be. And you know, in my conversation with him, one of the things that I tried to stress was, you know, we're really just at the very beginning of this, you know, as far as using this kind of technology to be able to, you know, hold classes and things like that. So, you know, with the advancement and the demand for better products, like better software, you know, than possibly Zoom, um, you know, people outfitting their homes, their home office with, you know, like a touchscreen TV or, you know, video cameras and things like that, so that, you know, the experience can be more interactive and more personal. You know, those are all things that could be coming down the line, and it's going to radically change, um, you know, how people work, but also how people learn. And so, you know, you know, I think it's very helpful, you know, to have a lot of people in that industry, you know, looking at what we're doing, because it gives them some kind of idea or roadmap, you know, to go forward. So anyway, I just want to thank you all for, you know, being in the class, and, you know, I think he got what he needed, and we'll see where that goes from there. But you know, this whole Zoom thing, this whole interactive, you know, everybody online, you know, it's a whole new world, and you know, we're gonna make it up as we go along. I guess is really,
It's definitely a game changer.
it is. It is. You
I
know,
like the Zoom because I like the Zoom because more people can participate. Because if you shop over there at the center, I don't think you're gonna have be able to accommodate too many people.
well, at this point, no, and in fact, that's what Veronica and I were talking about, because she asked a very good question, which is, you know, it's becoming very clear that, you know, we're getting hit with a second wave of this stuff, you know, through the Delta variant. And you know, we can have long discussions about why that happened and what we could have done to prevent it. But reality is it's here, and you have to kind of cope and deal with that situation. Well, you know, the idea of throwing the doors open at the senior centers, you know, in August, you know, and having everybody go back, yeah, that's probably not going to happen, you know. And in fact, you know, even though they were open to the idea of having a limited opening, that may be put off, you know, for a while. Now, I haven't heard anything officially saying that they're going to change the schedule or whatever, but I just get the sense that, you know, I think they're going to rethink this, and that we're going to, you know, kind of be in the same place that we've been for about the last year and a half, which is, you know, they want to be cautious, you know, which I think is appropriate. So that's just perfect.
Yeah. Sure.
But anyway, we're here. Anyway, happy Wednesday. We made it to the middle of the week. How about that? Okay. If by the end of the class today, we will be on the downhill side of the week, sliding toward the weekend. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I got some stuff for you. You know, I thought long and hard about doing this because I know that most of you are interested in what we would call fine art. Okay. You know, painting, drawing, sculpting, you know, things like that. But in my view, and this is my own personal view, there's some history. You know, there's some history that all of you really would benefit from knowing about. And I guess, you know, my thought is that knowing this will profoundly change the way that you view your own process of making art. Okay. And I think, you know, having some historical context for what you're doing is a really good idea. Now, for the next probably week or two, we're not going to be talking a lot about painting. Okay. We're going to be talking, you know, more about an art movement, and the name of, you know, what they call it is the arts and crafts movement. And the arts and crafts movement really began, you could take it back to around about the 1830s or 1840s. And originally it started in the British Isles and in several different places. And one of the places that it began, which a lot of people don't know about, is really in Glasgow, Scotland. And there was a whole crafts revival and movement in Glasgow. And one of the key people that was really well known, you know, from that movement is a fellow by the name of Rennie Mackintosh. And Rennie McIntosh, if you aren't familiar with his work, you know, he was very influential, not only to other arts and crafts
What was his first name?
organizations. What was that, Bernice?
What was his first name?
Rennie.
Renni?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, his whole name is Charles Rennie, Rennie McIntosh. Okay.
Charles McIntosh.
Yeah. Yeah, it's McIntosh. Macintosh. Okay.
Like a Macintosh computer.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Same name. Totally different thing though. Anyway, we're gonna watch a little bit of a video on him. But we're also, the main thing we're gonna focus on today is another gentleman from the arts and crafts period. And his name was William Morris. And William Morris, you could say, was probably one of about 5 of the most influential people in art history, period. Okay. You know, his ideals, you know, have basically infiltrated into every modern art movement really since around about the 1900s. And even into the Impressionist art movement and the Post-Impressionist, and all of the arts and crafts movements, you know, all across the world. And so we're gonna watch a brief video on him. There is a ton, you know, a ton of information out there on him because he really was so terribly influential. The thing I want you to know though about him is that he was actually influenced by another gentleman who just came a little bit before him by the name of John Ruskin, okay? Ruskin was a critic. He was an art critic, but he was also a professor. He was the first art history professor at an institution in England called Cambridge. Nobody's ever heard of that, right? But Ruskin, you know, basically sort of set the tone, you know, for how we see art, you know, historically. And so he was pretty important. Anyway, Morris was one of his students. And Morris started off being an architect, but, you know, was also a writer and, you know, just a designer, you know, all kinds of things. You know, he had his fingers in lots and lots of different stuff. So we're gonna play this video and that will introduce you to Morris. And I'm sure in this, it's gonna talk about Ruskin as well. But then, you know, these are all names that you're gonna hear multiple times through all of this. So, and I'll try to tie it all together for you here at the end. So let's see, there's, we'll start off with this one, okay.
William Morris.
Yep, good old Will Morris. All right, and notice what it says, political theory, okay. There we go.
The 19th century designer, poet, and entrepreneur William Morris is one of the best guides we have to the modern economy, despite the fact that he died while Queen Victoria was still on the throne, never made a telephone call, and would have found the very idea of TV utterly baffling. Morris was the first person to understand 2 issues which have become decisive for our times. Firstly, the role of pleasure in work, and secondly, the nature of consumer demand. William Morris was born in 1834 into a well-off English family. After graduating, he spent some time training as an architect, but at this stage, a conventional career wasn't his main concern. He saw himself as an artist and a poet. He was simply interested in making things for his own satisfaction and maybe for the enjoyment of a few friends. A year after he married his favourite actress and model, Morris became obsessed with the project of building and furnishing a family home at Bexley Heath in southeast London. It was called the Red House, and pretty much everything in it was designed from scratch, either by Morris himself or by his close friend and architectural collaborator, Philip Webb. The experience of building and fitting out his house taught Morris his first big lesson about the economy. It would have been simpler and maybe cheaper to have ordered everything from a factory outlet. But Morris wasn't trying to find the quickest or simplest way to set up home. He wanted to find the way that would give him and everyone involved in the project maximum satisfaction. This process fired Morris with an enthusiasm for the medieval idea of craft. The worker would develop sensitivity and skill and enjoy the labour. It wasn't to be mechanical or humiliating. He spotted that craft offers important clues to what we actually want from work. We want to know we've done something good with the day, that our efforts have counted towards tangible outcomes that we actually see and feel are worthwhile. Labour can be dignified. It was a timely insight. This was an era of massive industrialisation, and the conditions were often horrendous. Morris was determined to show that the principles of craft and of satisfying work for the worker could and should be at the heart of the modern world, and that, he realised, meant making them into a business. So in 1861, still in his mid-20s, Morris started a decorative arts business, Morris, Marshall, Faulkner & Co., which they like to call simply the firm. His colleagues included Burne-Jones, the brilliant poet, painter and charismatic personality Dante Gabriel Rossetti, and the architect Philip Webb. They set up a factory making wallpaper, chairs, curtains and tables. They were very proud not only of the elegant designs, but of the quality of the workmanship that went into all their products. But the firm soon encountered a very instructive problem. The factories and machines of the Industrial Revolution had brought about mass production. If you ask a comparatively high price to ensure the dignity of work and quality of materials, and so make something that will last, you really risk losing customers. Surely the logic of economics dictates that the lower price will always necessarily who does it. For Morris, the key factor is whether customers are willing to pay what he called the just price. If they are, then work can be honourable. If they're not, then work is necessarily going to be, on the whole, degrading and miserable. So Morris concluded that the linchpin of a good economy is the education of the consumer. We collectively need to get clearer about what we really want in our lives and why, and how much certain things are going to be worth to us. Until we have better collective taste, we're going to struggle to have a better economy and society. It's a huge idea. An important clue to good consumption, Morris insisted, is that you should have nothing in your houses that you don't know to be useful or believe to be beautiful. It's not an invitation to bleak renunciation. Morris wasn't trying to make anyone feel guilty or ashamed. He wished for people to see their purchases as investments and buy items sparingly. He would have preferred for someone to spend a great deal on an intricate, handmade dining set that would last for decades and grow to become a family heirloom, than for each generation to buy its own cheap alternative just to be thrown away when fashions changed. For Morris himself, his business didn't work out terribly well. There was healthy demand from the well-to-do. The Morris lines of furniture, wallpaper, fabrics and lamps continued to sell for many years and still do, but he didn't manage to break into the wider, bigger markets that he aspired to. He died in 1896 of tuberculosis. Still, we should remember him because he directs our attention to a set of centrally important tests that a good economy should pass. How much do people enjoy working? How long are consumer goods expected to last? Are the cities beautiful, generally, not just in a few privileged parts? The economy can, with fatal ease, feel as if it's governed by abstract, complex laws. Morris's point is that, nevertheless, the economy is intimately tethered to our preferences and choices. It may not be necessary to bring factories, banks, and corporations into public ownership, and it may not be necessary to wind back government impact on markets. The true task in creating a good economy, Morris shows us, lies much closer to home, in our own homes.
Okay. Anybody got any thoughts about what they just said?
I can see his philosophy, but how did it go out to the public?
Okay, can you say that again, please?
No, I said I can understand the philosophy of what he was doing,
Mhm.
but how did he sort of educate, quote unquote, the public to go along with those ideas?
Well, his broader idea was to basically reform society, and in particular the educational system. You know, you have to remember in England back in the 1840s through about the 1890s, you know, you had labor laws where you were taking basically uneducated people off of farms and out of the countryside, bringing them into the city, and then you were putting them in a factory. And they would work 14 to 16 hours a day in that factory because there were no labor laws. Okay. And that included their children. Okay. So when you had a family of, let's say, you know, 4 move off of some land in the countryside and they went into like Birmingham, England, or, you know, any of the other industrialized cities, you know, the father would get a job in a factory, but, you know, possibly the children, you know, particularly the sons, would work right there with their father. Because at the time, rather than getting an hourly wage, they were paid per piece. See, it's like every piece that they produced, they got, you know, a little bit of money for, right? And so your wage or the money that you would make was based on, you know, the volume that you would produce. Okay, not necessarily a bad, evil idea or anything like that, but the incentives, you know, were, you know, stay as long as you could, you know, keep working, you know, make as much as you can, and that's what you were paid on. And wages, you know, what they would be paid per piece was, you know, minuscule. I mean, it was really, really low wages. So it really became very necessary for not only the adults in the family, but also the children, you know, to work as well. And so that created a lot of social problems. You know, you had a lot of kids who were getting no education. You had a lot of adults who had really little or no education. You have to also keep in mind that in England at that time, probably less than 20% of the population could even read, you know, more or less do math, because they had gotten no schooling, you know, period. So his idea was to change society, you know, and the basis of that was really to focus on education and educate the working class. And as you educate them, one of the things you educate them in is aesthetics and understanding the value of things that are made well, that will last, right? Which is totally antithetical to like the Victorian era. And the Victorian era was kind of like, you know, let's fill your house with, you know, just all this stuff. If you've ever walked into a house that's decorated in, you know, in the Victorian style, you know, there's not a lot of floor space and there's stuff on everything. That was kind of the fashion. And then it's like the walls are covered in this really busy wallpaper. It's just like lots and lots of layers of stuff. And so Morris and the arts and crafts movement were socially against the idea of people being put in factories, you know, worked for those long hours, getting very little money out of it and no education. You know, what they were really after was they were trying to improve society as a whole. And that kind of flew in the face of, you know, 2 groups of people. You know, one, the elite in England, you know, the royal families. And number 2, all of the capitalists and industrialists who, you know, just wanted people there so that they could make as much money as they could. out of them and give them very little in return. So that was kind of his, his idea. Did that kind of answer the question, John?
Well, I can see where piecework would encourage production, but I don't think it would encourage quality, would it?
Well, yeah, and you see, that was the thing. They didn't care about quality. The industrialists, they just wanted more stuff. They were making china and stuff for people's houses because there was a demand for it, because all these people were moving from the country into the city and needed furnishings and things like that for the apartments and places that they were living. But it was never very well made. Okay. And so it wouldn't last. It wouldn't last more than, it wouldn't even last through a generation. And they would have to go buy more. Does that sound kind of familiar?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and it's no mystery as to who won out in this battle, by the way. Okay. Because look at the society that we live in today. Okay. The expectation is, when you buy a car, you're going to drive that car for 5 years, and then you're going to sell it and trade it in on the next car. So you see, in a capitalist society, basically what they want, in the big scheme of things, is that you're a consumer, and they want you consuming on a regular basis, which keeps you in debt, which, it's basically the flow of whatever you can earn trickles up, up to, to the people who own the companies, run those businesses and provide those products. Now, you can look at that a lot of different ways. Some people look at it as, well, these are really terrible, evil people. And then other people look at it as though, well, no, that's just, that's somebody who's trying to improve, their own life. Morris's argument, and really a lot of the philosophical arguments from that period of time, was not how do we elevate a few people and make another elite class of people, because we've already got one. It's how do we elevate the broader mass of society and bring everybody up. And so, again, Morris's focus was more on, education, and it probably would have worked, if you could have gotten the powers that be to educate the mass of people and to give them well-founded art education so that they appreciated the craftsmanship, and the fact that something that's well made will last a very long time, and you only buy it once and you never have to buy it again, which is totally in the face of a capitalist viewpoint, then the world would be a very different place. Okay. But as we all know, it didn't go that way. The capitalist
Planned obsolescence.
Right. Yeah. And the fact is, it's only gotten worse. Where out of those, factories in Birmingham, England, that they were spitting out tables and chairs and plates and dishes and stuff like that for the masses, that would only last maybe, 15, 20 years. Today, you buy an iPhone and you're expected in 3 years that phone is obsolete and you have to go get it, right?
I got that experience.
Yeah, yeah. You buy a brand new laptop computer every 4 years. Why?
Yep.
Because the software that you had on it when you bought it, which was the latest, greatest, fastest thing out there, in 4 years will be obsolete and you won't even be able to get on the internet with it. See? Because they've designed it that way, right? They've designed it so that they will force you to buy a new computer, buy a new phone, buy a new car, buy a new TV. They would like to do that, with buy a new house, other than the fact that nobody's going to buy houses anymore. I don't know whether you've heard it or not, but, the current hot thing out there is basically what they're saying is you will own nothing but be happy. In other words, you're going to become a full-time renter. You're not going to own a car. You're just going to lease stuff. Nobody's going to sell you. You don't own anything. You're just using it and paying to use it on an ongoing basis.
That sounds like communism.
Mhm.
Well, this is actually capitalism. Okay.
And that's debatable, whether capitalism really would want that.
Well, that's kind of where they're headed. That's kind of what they want. I mean, it's kind of in an affront to what we consider the American dream. The American dream around 1900 to 1940s was that everybody, would have their own home and raise their family in it. And then you would have property that you could pass on to your children. Well, that doesn't seem to be the current trend. The current trend is that hedge funds and, the super wealthy are buying up every piece of property that they can, and they're basically turning it into a rental market, so that everybody's going to have to rent from them because there's not going to be, any homes really for sale. I mean,
Bill,
you have BlackRock now, who you have developers who are developing whole communities that will never go on the market because they're selling the whole community to institutions like BlackRock.
yeah, but you know what, Charles, is the young people, they don't stay, they move around. That's what the rent now is good business. They don't like to stay in one place too long. They don't like to keep the same job too long. They want to just keep moving.
Yeah.
New generation.
Well, and we could get into debates about why that is, but when you're like my son, he's 30, my son is 33 now. I had him when I was 33. Okay. He's got 5 children now. At 33. And the thing is, okay, now he's lucky, he bought his own home. So he he has a home. He's not renting. But, if he had to change jobs or something like that, it would probably be very difficult for him to find an equivalent job, in Chattanooga that he could move to another company. So he would probably have to pick up and move to another area. He'd have to, because there's nowhere for him to go, in that community right now. So, and I think a lot of young people are in that position. Plus, in a lot of cases, if you're trying to buy a home, the average house price now in the United States, I think they said, is $246,000. That's the average. Okay. Show me a 26 or 27-year-old who can afford to buy a house like that. I'm 66. I can't afford to buy a house like that.
You look 47 to me.
Yeah, well, you're a very kind liar, but that's okay. Flattery will get you everywhere, right, Armando? That works really well with the ladies, actually. Okay. All right. So we had William Morris. Okay. So basically, what you could say about Morris was he was a philosopher, he was an architect, he was an artist and a designer. He was a semi-successful business person. And the thing is, he was socially active. and he influenced a lot of other people, you know, particularly writers and artists and things like that. Not only in England, but really all across the world. Okay, and he didn't start it all by himself, but he was certainly an influence in what is now considered the arts and crafts movement, which was actually one of the biggest art movements of history, period. You know, bigger than the Renaissance, bigger than, you know, just about any other art movement. And it actually influences our lives today, every day, you know, in the houses that we live in, and a lot of the concepts and ideas, you know, behind architecture and design. So I want to share with you, let's see, what have I got? Yeah, okay. This is a couple of videos on the arts and crafts movement itself, not just Morris, but the arts and crafts movement. And so, let's do arts and crafts, yeah. Yeah, that's the one we want. There we go. Okay, and away we go. Everybody see a nice
The British arts and
fireplace
crafts
burning?
movement of the late 19th century grew out of the artistic and social activism of Ruskin and William Morris, who exposed the detrimental effects of industrialization on both art and the lives of workers. John Ruskin was a respected art critic, polymath, and social visionary who became the first professor of art history at Oxford in 1869. William Morris had a more hands-on approach to revolutionizing the applied arts, learning and reviving traditional practices in stained glass, tapestry weaving, printing, and natural textile dyes in his Morris and Company workshops. Both men decried the shoddy nature of factory-produced wares that flooded the already over-decorated parlors of the Victorian period, and called for a re-evaluation of what truly constituted a beautiful home. In his now famous dictum, Morris asked, "What else can we do to help to educate ourselves and others in the path of art, to be on the road to attaining an art made by the people and for the people, as a joy to the maker and the user? Believe me, if we want art to begin at home, as it must, if you want a golden rule that will fit everybody, this is it. Have nothing in your houses that you do not know to be useful or believe to be beautiful." Overlooking the River Thames in London's borough of Hammersmith is Kelmscott House, the London home of William Morris from 1878 until his death in 1896. Part of the house remains open today as the William Morris Society and Museum. Curator Helen Ellitson explains the lasting appeal of William Morris.
Well, Morris himself influenced a wide variety of people. I think because Morris was so wide-ranging, it's not just arts and crafts, but other people, book designers, typographers, environmentalists, socialists have been inspired by him, you know, right up to now, to this day. His legacy really does live on in many different people in their work and lives. And I think what's interesting is there's quite a lot happening now in the way of like exhibitions. Fiona McCarthy's exhibition, the National Portrait, coming up, and that I believe goes up to 1950s, showing how Morris started with the arts and crafts movement, and the legacy was built on afterwards. And I think what's so important about Morris is that what he believed in sort of shines through in the products that he made. And I think people have really taken that message to heart, and the idea that you have beautiful things in your home that would impact and have a really profound influence on your quality of life. And I think a lot of designers to this day are looking at Morris and trying to do that. You can, they're again going away from what Morris believed. He hated the Industrial Revolution, the factory system, and the way that designer and maker were divorced. There was no link there. And I think contemporary people today are trying to put Morris's ideas back into practice again, and designing and making the things themselves, which is really interesting. I think Morris would be pleased to see that his work lives on to this day.
Ruskin and Morris critiqued the division of labor in factory production lines as dividing the souls of the men, women, and children who worked them. They went on to spearhead social movements to improve the working and living conditions of the lower classes. In 1871, Ruskin formed what would become the Guild of St. George, promoting art education and craft work to revive rural economies and challenge the model of unchecked industrial capitalism. William Morris had already established a guild system with shared profits at his Merton Abbey workshops, producing decorative arts for Morris and Company. The ideals of both men took root and became a movement in the early 1880s, first with the formation of the Century Guild in 1882, led by the architect and designer Arthur Haygate McMurdo. The Century Guild published an influential quarterly magazine, The Hobby Horse, which combined modern painting and design with literature. A group of young London-based architects founded the Art Workers Guild in 1884, whose aim was to bridge the traditional divisions between artists, architects, designers, and craftsmen. Uniting designers and artisans from a broad range of the applied arts, together they challenged the Royal Academy's preferencing of the so-called high arts, in which painting was elevated above all others. Prior to the Renaissance, this hierarchy did not exist in the same way, and the high work standards of wood carvers, stonemasons, and illuminators was not relegated below that of painters. Social reform projects arose to counter appalling conditions of poverty, such as Toynbee Hall, which opened in 1885 in London's poorer East End. Part of the university extension movement, it gave Oxford and Cambridge graduates like C.R. Ashby access to the local community. Here, art would be a driving force in reform, and Ashby would go on to train East End Cockneys in the traditional arts of wood carving, metalwork, and blacksmithing to found his Guild of Handicraft in 1888. Also in 1888, the arts and crafts movement coalesced around the formation of the Arts and Crafts Exhibition Society, including designers, makers, and manufacturers. Their credo was that art is or should be an agent in the production of noble life. Society exhibitions began in 1888 and continued annually for 3 years, and then every 3 years thereafter. The exhibitions featured lectures and demonstrations given by its leading designers, such as William Morris, shown here at the Loom, lecturing on traditional weaving techniques, and sketched by his friend, the artist Edward Burne-Jones. In 1893, the Society published an important series of essays by their most prominent masters in the British applied arts, which laid out standards of excellence in their respective fields, including woodworking, stained glass, ceramic, metalwork, textiles, and the publishing arts of manuscripts, bookbinding, and printing. While the movement had mainly begun in London in the 1880s, in the following decade it spread to Britain's industrial cities. Art workers' guilds and schools teaching the applied arts became active throughout the nation, including the Central School of Arts and Crafts in London, the Birmingham School of Art, the Keswick School of Industrial Art, and others in Manchester, Liverpool, and Glasgow. The arts and crafts design aesthetic can initially be difficult to pinpoint, as the range of the applied arts it impacted is so broad. However, common to the diversity of work media was an ideal of truth to materials, clean, functional designs that allowed the natural beauty of the components to shine through and not be dominated by unnecessary ornamentation or surface treatment. Furniture, for example, was constructed from native woods, often with traditional woven rush seats, and the woodwork left unpainted in order to celebrate the wood's natural grain, color, and luster. Beautifully crafted joints were left exposed to celebrate the handmade craftsmanship of the piece. This return to simplicity characterized many of the arts and crafts designs, and indeed a broader approach to life espoused by its practitioners. They sought to counter the excesses of Victorian culture, and interior decoration in particular, by suggesting that less is more. It would go on to shape artistic and social movements in America and Europe, more so than other movements of its time, such as the aesthetic movement and the more decorative Art Nouveau. Art Nouveau found its fullest flowering in France, but had its leading designers in Britain also, including Charles Rennie Mackintosh and Archibald Knox. Its swirling lines and the way motifs are elongated and abstracted can be distinguished from arts and crafts' more rectilinear design style and clean surfaces. Among the arts and crafts design principles espoused by Ruskin and Morris was a return to nature for design inspiration. Already in the Victorian period, a fascination with botany was fueled by the discoveries of new specimens arriving from around the world in Britain's far-flung empire. For example, Oxford University's Museum of Natural History opened in 1860, with its neo-Gothic design and celebration of natural motifs attributed by the architects Benjamin Woodward and Thomas Newnham Dean to the influence of John Ruskin. The inner court is surrounded by 30 columns on each floor, each constructed of a different British stone, and their capitals are topped by individually distinct carvings of botanical specimens. The stonemasons, the O'Shea brothers, worked from live plant specimens such as this pitcher plant, brought fresh to the worksite from Magdalen College's Botanical Gardens, itself the oldest botanical garden in England. The arts and crafts movement continued this kind of celebration of nature and its motifs, with many of the textiles, ceramics, and metalwork featuring trees and flowers from Britain's native hedgerows as a way to bring the beauty inherent in nature into the home. By reviving interest in the natural environment, the arts and crafts movement is often incorrectly misrepresented as rejecting mechanization. However, even William Morris, the acknowledged father of the arts and crafts movement, had machine looms in his workshops at Merton Abbey, using them when they reduced workers' tedium and not when they might inhibit creativity. Indeed, it was more the larger social costs of industry that Morris opposed, declaring that he was not against machinery per se, but the great intangible machine of commercial tyranny, which oppresses the lives of all of us. In 1883, Morris joined the Democratic Federation, an early party in the British Socialist movement, and over the next decade lectured at rallies and in support of workers' strikes around the country.
Well, I think obviously Morris himself was really trying to make things better, life better for the working classes, and he really wanted a revolution to take place. Morris was very struck by the poverty of this area when he came to live here in 1878. Although this stretch of the side is very beautiful, surrounding it were really poor quality housing areas and to the left of this house, Little Wapping was a terrible area with really poor quality housing and real areas of deprivation, and this really struck Morris. He'd always had a social conscience, but this really prompted him to do something about it. And he did say it was only his good luck being born on this side of the window amongst beautiful books and works of art, and not out there in the street amongst the poverty he could see. And so in 1883, he joined the Social Democratic Federation. Afterwards,
Democratic Federation
branch was founded. So this was the meeting hall of the Hammersmith Socialists, and they continued to meet here every Sunday evening throughout Morris's life, and he dedicated a huge amount of time and energy to the socialist cause, speaking many times locally in Hammersmith. One of his favourite spots was just down the road at the foot of Hammersmith Bridge, but of course he spoke up and down the country as well, and lots of famous people spoke here and came to watch and listen to the lectures. May Morris herself used to supervise the library here, just above us, and Gustav Holst used to supervise the Socialist League choir. So there's some really interesting people that were here, and George Bernard Shaw was among those prominent speakers after Morris himself, and his memoirs give a real tantalising glimpse into what it was like being a young socialist in those revolutionary days. Yeah, well, Morris himself influenced a wide
Arts and crafts isn't just about glitter, glue, and garish bottle hats. Arts and crafts, the movement, was actually one of the most influential periods in design history. About 150 years ago, people had become totally fed up with machines. Not that kind of machine, this kind. The steam age had brought mechanization to industry, agriculture, and transportation, which changed everything. People had gone nuts for technology. Manufacturers could now make loads of stuff for loads of people without really thinking too much about the final product. Before the Industrial Revolution, a craftsman would spend a lifetime perfecting his skill, and it showed. But when mass production came along, the art of making things, crafting them, kind of faded away. The arts and crafts movement was a rebellion, a reaction to the negative impact of industry, and this Beardy led the charge. William Morris was a poet and artist. He believed industrial production was making us less creative and removing skill from the manufacturing process. Morris said, "We do not reject the machine, we welcome it, but we would desire to see it mastered." His influential company, Morris, Marshall, Faulkner & Co. provided everything the 19th century homeowner needed, from wallpaper to furnishing, stained glass to carpeting. Arts and crafts purists like Morris liked to see, well, craftsmanship in the things they made and sold. Hammer marks were left visible on metalwork, joints exposed in furniture. The movement promoted economic and social reform while championing ordinary workers and underappreciated craftspeople. Arts and crafts had global appeal. You could say arts and crafts never actually ended. Its morals, ethics, and political aims are still evident today. We love knowing where our stuff is made and whether it was made well. are not. Even though we now rely upon technology more than at any point in human history, we also still care about how and why something is made. You can thank the arts and crafts movement for that. Have you mastered your machines?
Okay. All right. So, any thoughts about what they were talking about?
My answer to the last question was no. I'm still trying to master this machine that I'm holding in my hand,
Yeah.
and it's mastering me.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
What machine? Show it.
Okay.
Show the machine, Alois.
Show the machine.
Yeah. what
I'm holding
machine?
it. I'm on my phone.
Yeah, you can only see her
Oh.
because she's using it.
Well, if you bought it 2 years ago, go to the store and get another one.
Yeah, it
I
probably.
did. It's still.
Yeah, it probably
Get
looks.
Oh,
me.
you're learning. You're
Huh?
learning. That's the
Yes.
You're learning the new phone. Okay.
Okay. So again, you know, it's when you think about, you know, the arts and crafts movement, yes, it was a movement about design and style and things, but it was also a social movement. And that's kind of an important key thing that you have to keep in mind. Because from that period forward, you know, there have always been craftsmen and people who kind of followed that philosophy of wanting to make something that was individual, that was well made, that had unique style to it.
Yeah.
It wasn't really about mass production. It was about doing something well.
Beauty.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, your aesthetic senses. But also, you know, doing something well, but using good materials that would last. Again, so, you know, you're not making one of these every 2 years, you know, to replace the old one. It's something that you make it, it's going to be around for, you know, a couple of generations. And, you know, if you have ever lived in a house, you know, and bought anything like arts and crafts furniture, then you'll know that, you know, basically the way it was made, it's going to hang around for a couple of 100 years. It's not going to fall apart on you. So yeah, it's that aesthetic, not only of how something looks, but, you know, the fact that it functions well and that it will last is very, very important in all of this. Okay. So to kind of close this up today, there are two people I want to introduce you to. One I mentioned earlier, and his name was Rennie McIntosh. And, you know, McIntosh was an interesting individual. He comes from Glasgow, Scotland. And if you really historically look back, he was probably the first person that you would say that was doing, you know, arts and crafts, you know, type furniture. He predated William Morris by about 20 years. And he opened a school called the Glasgow School. And some of the stuff that they made was incredible. Now, he was reading a lot of John Ruskin's articles and papers. So, you know, he's very up to date on what was going on, you know, internationally with, you know, arts in general. But, you know, probably McIntosh was one of the main influencers of another art movement called Art Nouveau. And you can begin to see it, you know, actually in his work. So I'm going to play this short video for you. And we're going to just kind of look at his stuff. And it's interesting. The backstory behind this video is that he had designed a complete home with furnishings for like a World's Fair exhibition and I think this was around about 1900, 1902, but got rejected. And so none of this was ever built. Well, somewhere in the 80s, somebody had the great idea of actually building this house and making all this stuff. So you actually get to see it and go from room to room. And it's a really enjoyable video. I think you'll really like, what he did. But also look at the difference between the space and the light and what's in the room, and how kind of simple and sparse it is and modern versus a Victorian kind of decoration. Okay, so let's see, arts and crafts. Yeah, this one right here. All right. So this guy,
Harry Rogers.
yeah, that's the narrator. Okay, so away we go. Let's start at the very beginning.
Well, hi, I'm in Glasgow today, a long way from home, up in Scotland. But I thought I'd get some ideas, because you can work in your workshop and somehow it becomes quite restrictive. So I thought I'd get out and have a look at some of the arts and crafts in Glasgow. And there's lots of Annie Mackintosh work here, including the splendid Willow Tea Rooms, which is behind me. Well, it's a rather wet day today, but come to the House of an Art Lover, which is a house which was designed by Mackintosh for a competition in 1902. And he actually submitted his drawings. He got disqualified from the competition because he had insufficient drawings. He had about a dozen or so drawings. Anyway, the house was never built. But what did happen more recently is it was built. Basically, funding was found, and from 1989 to 1996, they decided to build the house. And it's here now. So I'm going to go inside and have a look. I'll try and catch you outside a little later on, but as it's rather wet, we'll go in. And you start with a really small hallway, and then you go into this rather impressive large grand hall. And there's a lovely mix of stained woodwork and, again, beautiful stained glass. It's lovely arts and crafts style. Here's an actual print of one of the rooms from the competition folio that Mackintosh entered into the competition. And the room's actually been very faithfully recreated here. And it really does capture all the sort of essence of Mackintosh. It's got a lovely clean style, very spacious. Interestingly enough, whilst there's a lot of use of dark stained wood, it actually still looks very effective because it's very well lit with good windows and good lighting as well, with the right ceilings. These rather fun panels up here as well. One of the aims of the competition was to build this house for, as say, an art lover, is to use traditional sort of craft techniques. And what's quite interesting here is Mackintosh did exactly that, but he used really completely different design. So it's lovely, simple stained glass and metal work here. Stonemason's craft with this fireplace. Very simple but effective painting here with the Glasgow roses. Slight variation here on the high back chairs, and these actually have seagrass seats. Rather nice beaten copper handles here. Not too difficult to make, but actually very effective. A bit of cabinet work. I quite like these little window effects. Again, very simple. There's more stained glass set into this cabinet.
one of the reasons for the dark interiors was to show off the white tuxedos of the gentlemen and the white of the ladies' dresses. This table has some quite interesting inserts just underneath. Here's the design for the music room, and it is truly impressive. It's a large, lovely light room. These lovely long windows coming down. More Macintosh furniture with the high chairs. Front curtain hangings. And another fireplace that picks out the Macintosh elements. So all this has been recreated from the original sketches. And again, it's lovely use of stained glass and metal. At the time, I mean, you consider this was designed in 1902, it really must have been just so totally different to anything at the time. And the piano does work, we just tried it. These upright posts are symbolic of trees, and they have little leaf effects at the top. Have such a light interior in 1902 was really just unheard of. And also to have the windows going in this way from the floor to the ceiling. They're very nicely bowed outward as well, they're not flat windows. But this piano here is actually a Yamaha piano, which I'm sure didn't exist at the time. So this is all a recreation from the original drawings. So it gives a good idea what it would have looked like. I do like the work above the piano here. And apparently the chairs are quite comfortable. My dear wife has just commented to that effect. I'm still in the music room and just looking at these cupboards and fun beaten out panels here. Just pewter type panels with little rocks. Very simply done, but actually really effective. Above the fireplace, we have more work with stained glass. It's more what I call a copper foil technique. So it's actually thinner, it's not like lead cane, but it's quite nice and delicate. I like the way the doors to this room have the little side panels as well. Little windows set in. Here's a 3D model of the actual house, which is quite a nice way of seeing it, particularly if it's raining outside at the moment. Just get the idea of the shapes and the style. They could judge a position recreated from the plans by the windows. That gave a clue as to where the rooms were. I'm now upstairs in the house and just looking down into the main hall. This is like a balcony. So upstairs again, there's this nice walkway and dark panelling. Lovely metalwork with the lighting. This is one of the original drawings which Macintosh did for the competition, and it shows the south elevation of the house. And here's the view from the north side. Again, nice lettwork windows with these doors. So using virtually see-through glass, except opalescent glass in these little pieces. Throughout the house, there will be lovely light fittings, and these lanterns here are quite handsome, again, stained glass. And the backdrop, you've got this window, nice stained glass reveals there. This is the Margaret MacDonald room. Okay, the lovely chairs and tables, and an impressive ceiling light, casting lovely light across the whole room. The fireplace in this room is quite simple, but good sniffing, I would say. You get the nice impression with the window, and each side of the window are these nice little window seats. And the actual house is set in some parkland. So it's a very good setting for a house like this. This centre light panel is rather magnificent. It's oval to suit the openness of the room. And what's also interesting is the glass is white on the inside. And in fact, to make this up, they actually had to source the last 2 panes of glass from Ireland that were actually suitable. And then the pink colour is put on by an enamelling process on the top surface of the glass. From the house, you keep getting glimpses of quite interesting white fittings, such as these ones here. Here's yet another variant of nice translucent glass, and this one's got effective with a bit more translucent glass in the window. Here's an outside view of the house, and you think if this was done in 1902, it would have been quite strikingly different from anything else. Very large sort of stone carvings in places around here. So I mean, just above that main hall, to say you've got some really massive carvings which are being done. Anyway, that's the back. I'll just whiz round and take a look at the front. Try and get that little weather vane type arrangement up there, like the front. Well, here's the front of the house, and you can see now how they actually worked out the position of rooms by looking at the windows when they put the original drawings, decide how to make this. And again, massive stone carvings on the front there. See how far I'm going. It's raining quite hard actually, so I hope you can see this.
Okay. Anybody got any thoughts on that house or any of the things that were made?
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A lot of metal work. Mm-hmm. It didn't make to me for a cozy, warm house, but mm-hmm. It was functional.
Yeah.
And modern.
Yeah, considering that it was, basically around 1900 when both the architecture and a lot of the interior furnishings were designed. And you can see in the stained glass work and a lot of the interior work how that influenced Art Nouveau in France, right? The flowing lines and everything got very decorative. But then you go to the exterior of the house and you look at it, and that could be a house that was built today.
Yeah.
Yeah, it had.
I've seen some of. It looked something like the houses I saw in Africa. When I went there, the outside of the stonework. Mm-hmm. They do that stonework in Africa on a lot of the houses.
Okay, what part of Africa were you in?
In Ghana.
In Ghana, okay. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the look of the architecture itself is very modern,
Mm-hmm.
and you can actually see a lot of, like, later on in, say, Art Deco and, what we call the modern design movement in American architecture. A lot of those buildings look very similar to that now.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking when I saw it. I thought of Art Deco, the 30s, and even the exterior of the building, the Guggenheim Museum and things like that, all those elements.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, remember, okay, when, now this was for an exhibition in 1902.
Right.
When he designed a lot of that furniture and basically came up with a lot of the architectural concepts, was really around about 1860 to 1870 is when he designed that stuff. So if you go back and look at where that fits historically, he was like way ahead of his time, you know, a good 30 to 40 years before, you know, really anybody would really take notice of it and go, hey, you know, really have some kind of appreciation for it, I would say. And, you know, you find people like that all throughout art history where, you know, they're doing something, but people don't recognize it at the time, you know, as being valuable, you know, because it's so different than what people are used to. And then, you know, 30, 40, 50 years later, you know, it becomes very popular. And that was very true with Macintosh's work in general. So, but anyway. Anybody got any other thoughts about it? Like it, don't like it?
Oh, I like it. I like the metalwork and the stained glass. I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Eloise? Could you live in a house like that?
Nope.
No?
Didn't like it.
Didn't like it.
Wouldn't feel comfortable there.
Neither
Wouldn't
do
feel
I.
homey.
Yeah. Okay.
Neither do I.
Okay.
I liked it, but I wouldn't live there, but I liked it. But, yeah, I did like it.
I like your house in Alabama.
Oh, you like my house in Alabama? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I like my house. I like the idea of my house in Alabama. You know, there's a lot of work to be done there, but we're going to get there.
It's easier to keep it clean than this big house.
It is actually, yeah. One of the things I would mention to you about, you know, Macintosh's interiors and things like that, if you really begin to look at it, it's, and, you know, I don't know how many of you have traveled to, say, Southeast Asia, like Japan, Thailand, places like that. But the interiors are actually very similar and particularly to Japanese architecture, you know, where it's very, very simple and things are sort of, they're built in, so you don't really notice them. They're part of the architecture. If you've lived in Japan or anywhere like that, they don't have a lot of separate pieces of furniture. And in fact, if you go into a Japanese house, there's probably not more than 4 or 5 separate pieces of furniture that aren't actually part of the architecture.
Even the piano was built in. That was beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. But, you know, in many ways, Macintosh was influenced, you know, by Japanese design. And if you really think about it, right around about 1860, well, 1840, 1850, well, we had a American admiral show up in the harbor of, you know, in Japan with a bunch of warships. And before that, almost for a period of about 400 years, Japan was closed off. They wouldn't let anybody into the country. And Perry was his name. And, you know, basically he showed up with a bunch of warships and wasn't going to take no for an answer because his idea was that, you know, America needed places to sell things. And they thought that Japan was a good target since it was a closed market. But what happened is, you know, as they opened up Japan, a lot of artwork and a lot of the concepts and ideas and cultural ideas from Japan got disseminated across the world, and it influenced the Impressionist art movement, the arts and crafts movement, and just about every other art movement after that. And so you could kind of credit the, you know, Japanese culture with this whole idea of simplicity in modern architecture and design. And, you know, it's very influential even today in a lot of the products and the things that we take for granted.
Some
So,
years ago, I stayed in Japan only briefly, but the home I stayed in was modern like ours. It was just about, I guess it was Americanized then. If other homes were different, the appliances were smaller, but otherwise the accommodations and everything were about the same as they are here.
yeah, yeah. Where in Japan were you?
Around Tokyo, Kyoto,
Okay.
and that area.
Yeah, yeah. I lived in Japan for almost 4 years as a kid. 2 years in what is, you know, referred to as Okinawa, which at the time was not part of Japan. Now it's become part of Japan again. And then from Okinawa, we moved to Kyoto and lived there for almost 2 years. And but again, you know, most of the architecture there that they've built in, say, the last 70 years or so is you know, more westernized. And, you know, all of the housing that I lived in was military housing. So it was kind of like living in a ranch duplex is kind of the common housing for military people, you know, there. But the traditional Okinawans and Japanese, if you look at their house, you know, their houses are usually built on a square format, and it's usually got like 4 rooms in it, and that's it. You know? And all of the walls are, they're not like solid walls. They're just, you know, like sliding doors that open and close. You know, and that's a traditional Japanese house in most cases. So, but yeah, interesting blend of cultures and things like that. Let's see how we're doing time-wise. There's one other person. Yeah, we've got time. There's one other person that I want to show you his work. And he was actually an American, all right? And the arts and crafts movement came to America in a big way. And whatever the English did with arts and crafts, which was pretty substantial, you know, once it got to the United States, it, you know, it became a pretty big deal. And in fact, we live with a lot of the influences of it today. And if you live in Atlanta and you've ever driven on the west side of Atlanta or the south side of Atlanta, there's whole neighborhoods of what are considered arts and crafts bungalows. It became sort of the common man's house. And they built literally, you know, millions of these things, you know, all across the country. And you know, for the time when they were built, which was late 1800s through about the 1930s, you know, it was really probably some of the best technology architecturally for a residential home that we've ever come up with. Because just think about it in the sense of when people, and particularly like in the Southeast United States, built these homes, they built them with a couple of things in mind. One, they wanted them to be energy efficient because a lot of these houses were built pre-electricity. So they had a lot of large windows. They had to be well ventilated, and they had to be easy to heat and cool, right? Now this is before air conditioning or like gas furnaces. So in a lot of cases, they had multiple fireplaces to warm them during the winter. But in the summer, in the Southeast, a lot of these houses were built with what they call a vented attic space. And so you had airflow that would come in under the eaves of the house and flow through the attic and basically dissipate a lot of the heat. And so those houses would actually be naturally air conditioned and stay cooler. So on a 100-degree day, in a lot of these old houses, you could comfortably be in that house, at around about 80 degrees, and it would be about 20 degrees cooler than outside.
And they were drafty in the wintertime.
Well,
They had-
yeah, they were. But, you had to know how to use the house. You could close up,
room by room. You had to close up
right.
the doors to
Yeah.
isolate
Yeah,
yourself.
and that's why you had fireplaces in most of the rooms of the house, see, to warm those areas. So they wouldn't heat the whole house. They would just heat like the family room. And, obviously the kitchen would stay warm because they were cooking and things in there on a pretty regular basis. So there was always some kind of heat being radiated out of it. But for the time, they were pretty, they were pretty efficient houses. And was far better than what had come before. If you've ever lived in an old colonial house, yeah, you can never keep those either cool or warm. I don't care what time of year it is. So, anyway, the guy I want to introduce you to, though, his name is Charles Rohlfs, and that's spelled Rohlfs, and a very interesting character. Now, Rohlfs was a designer, and he only worked for about 10 years building this furniture, and it's really, really interesting stuff. So I think you'll kind of enjoy it, and it's very bizarre. It's definitely different. And I don't. There were a couple of videos on him. Okay, yeah. No, that's Charles Rennie Mackintosh. That's not what we wanted. Where is Rohlfs? Crafts. YouTube. Oh, there he is. He's hiding. Okay. All right. Can everybody see a page full of like furniture and stuff? And it says Charles Rohlfs at the top.
Yes.
Okay. All right, good. We got the right thing then.
Was he American?
Yes, he was. Yeah. Yeah, he was American. He built most of this furniture back in around the 1870s and 1880s.
Yeah, from Brooklyn, New York.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. But and I'll just click on a few of these. If you look over to the right-hand side, you see a bigger picture of over in this area. Everybody see the cursor going around that chair?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
if you look at that, that's a very strange, very kind of almost modern chair, right? Here's a slightly different angle of it without the cushion on it. Yeah, but he made some very, very bizarre looking furniture.
Each one of those furniture, some of them, they have a specific use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I have been told before when I see a wheelchair, say, on display, no, this used to be for so and so and so.
Yeah. There's a, fairly contemporary idea for a chair. We've seen different versions of that now out there. But, craftsmanship, carving, different elements, was a really big integral part of his furniture design. And he didn't, he really didn't like a lot of the mission and the arts and crafts furniture being made because it was too plain. And so, he wanted to bring back some of the decorative elements. And if you really look at it, you can almost see, that there's some very, very strong Asian influences.
Definitely Asian, yeah.
Yeah. So, really interesting stuff. Now, I started collecting arts and crafts furniture about 30 years ago. And at the time, you know, there wasn't really a lot known about him. You know, now he's fairly well documented. But he, you know, none of the stuff that he did was ever became massively popular. You know, it wasn't, you know, distributed. It was never manufactured in mass. Guess where a lot of it ended up?
Where?
Actually, in the house of the Kennedy family. I think it was, her name was Jane Kennedy, who was the probably the great grandmother of John F. Kennedy. Yeah, they were industrialists. They ended up buying like a lot of the furniture and furnishing a couple of the houses that they had with it. You know, you can kind of see like a Middle Eastern, almost Arabic influence, you know, in that table.
Yeah, especially in that black chair right there. The one with the black back on it.
The
Chinese and Asian influence.
Yeah.
A lot of pieces.
Yeah, beautiful stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Again, probably not easy to live with. You know, it's not.
Or sit in for a long period of time.
That's the thing.
If you were just going to get one piece for an art piece, I can really see how you would love that. Some of it just for an art piece in a specific room, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I like old furniture.
Yeah. Well, see, I've like, well, you can barely see it. See, there was a better.
Old houses.
Yeah. The little table that's up here in the top, I've actually got one of those here, you know, at my.
Which one?
This one that's in the window over to the right. It's a small little, they call it a planter stand. It's actually just a little side table.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got he didn't make it. It was like a reproduction. It was made probably in about the 1920s, but it's a reproduction of that table right there. And
I think the tables seem familiar looking, but I don't know if they survived or whatever, but the chairs are all very different.
Yeah, yeah. Well, actually, all of his furniture has basically survived. It's stood the test of time. It's really, really well made. The interesting thing.
Todd, you see that 1898 desk chair?
Do I see what?
1890. I think it's the second line down and about 5 across.
1, 2, 3, 4. Right here.
Right.
Yeah, with the really tall back. Yeah.
I actually like that.
Yeah, that's very similar to Reading.
I can see that at the end of a hallway or something. You know,
would you like to sit in it, Bernice?
I wouldn't want to sit on it. No, I would like it like to the entrance of a big room or something. You know.
Yeah, just to look at it, not sit on it.
Absolutely. I was thinking of it as an art piece.
Yeah, well,
art.
I could actually vouch for that chair because I've actually sat in chairs just like that, and they're actually comfortable. It's based on a Roman chair.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not got 4 legs; it's only got 3. So you can put it on almost any kind of floor surface, and it will balance. But the other part is because of the shape of the seat. You know, it's very easy to sit in it, and your legs kind of go off to the side, so it's really quite comfortable. And and it's not real deep, so even if they're to the front, it's not like the edge of the seat is cutting into the back of your legs, unless you've got like really, really short legs.
I think that chair is for you to hang your coat.
Say what?
I think that chair that you can hang your coat on that thing because it's tall. Back,
yeah, you can throw your jacket or your shirt or something on the back of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, he's actually one of my favorite arts and crafts designers. Just because it's the stuff is so different, but really, really well thought out. One of the things I was going to mention to you, here's a picture of a guy. This is not Charles Ross. He's long gone. But one of the things, like this particular chair right here, was really made out of 3 solid wood panels. And the interesting thing about all of his furniture is that the joints are cut where they all fit together. You know, it's got what we call, tenon and mortise, fittings on it. So it all slides together and locks. And then you can take it apart into different pieces to move it. So you don't have to pick up the whole chair. But say if you're moving across the country, it comes apart in 3 pieces, and you just kind of pack that up flat and then ship it. And he built all of his furniture that way, so that it would come apart and fold down, and was easy to move and easy to put back together.
I guess furniture like this would cost a lot today, right?
Oh God, yes. Yeah, if you could even find it. I mean, there's probably not more than a couple of thousand, pieces of furniture that he did in that 10 years. And right now it's like every museum and institution, in the country and really even around the world are fighting, to get anything that they can of his. Yeah, so we're talking about, like this chair right here, and he probably did like no more than about 15 or 20 of these, and they probably sell in the range of about $30,000 to $50,000 a piece.
Wow. Okay.
So, but yeah, just
Did you said he worked only like 10 years. Did he die, or did he go into another direction?
No, he went into a different direction. He basically, what did he do? He went from, designing furniture and stuff. He was basically an architect and a designer.
Okay.
And he had worked in doing like prints and things like that before, and then kind of semi-retired and started doing furniture. And then after that went back into like an architectural firm, working with a different group of people, and stopped doing the woodwork. So, but, strange, but beautiful stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, this chair is pretty amazing. Just looking at all the carving on that. So, but didn't use, there were no like metal screws or anything else in any of his woodwork. It was all like mortise and tenon and dowels and pins. So, and the stuff is really, really solidly made. It's not going anywhere. But,
now that looks like a Chinese.
yeah, that's not his. Yeah,
Oh.
they're actually African carved chairs. So,
Yeah, I've seen those in Africa too.
yeah, okay. But yeah, like this table here. Yeah. Strange looking stuff. So anyway, see what else he's got here that we can look at. Now these are, is this, yeah, this is Ross. Okay. Let me click on this and see if I can get it bigger. I don't know where it's going to take us to. Okay. You were asking about the price. Well, all this stuff is sold. That's not surprising. Okay. Let's click and see. Yeah, it says see sold price. They'll probably make us want to sign up. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What's it worth?
Now that sofa looking chair, I've seen those before. They make those like in Gambia and in Ghana. They use those a lot. I guess they get, the cultures kind of overlap.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. I mean, you know, designers take influences.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
okay.
can see the influence.
All right, so I just signed in because actually this is a website that I go to fairly often, actually. So like this little table right here, or the desk, $210,000 is what it sold for. See, this.
I have to get somebody to make me one.
Right. Yeah, but I mean that was unusually high. I don't know when it. I don't know when it sold or how long ago. But like this sofa right here, you know, it's $23,000.
Too low for me.
Yeah, and I've seen those a lot. I've seen those.
Yeah,
in the Gambia. Yeah.
Right. Well, this is a fairly,
it's
very similar to a very typical what they call mission settle. And that was a very popular style. The two chairs right here, now I've seen reproductions of these, and you see they sold for $16,000. So.
Yeah, if you get a good carver, you can get somebody to carve you. Do some of that work. It wouldn't be exactly like that. But.
Yeah, a good weekend project, right? Right. Yeah.
A good carver won't be cheap either, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. But you know, like this little Moorish table here, it's, you know, they're kind of thinking right around $16,000. And that's probably, let's see, it's 29 inches by 32. I'm guessing that the 32 might be the width. The 29 might be the height. Most of those were fairly low, and they would either sit, you know, like next to a chair or a couch. So, but you know.
It's not even in good condition, you know.
It's not.
Yeah, that one
for 16,000.
Well, that's beautiful wood. I wonder what kind of wood it is.
I can tell you exactly what kind of wood it is. It's
mahogany.
No, it's called quarter sawn oak.
Oh, now that one that say lock holder.
Yeah, this one right here.
That for what? To put that what, a Bible?
No. It sits next to your fireplace, and you'd stack your firewood in there.
Oh.
So, you know, on a cold winter's day, rather than running out 4 or 5 times during the day to get firewood, this would sit over by your fireplace, and this was leather on each side. And then you would put your logs in there, and then as you needed a log, you'd go over and pick up the log and put it in your fireplace to keep you warm. So, you know, $12,000 is a little steep for something like that. I think I could. Yeah, I think I could do better with a couple 2x4s. So
I passed by now. Well.
Yeah, but you know, again, you know, this is actually a pretty good catalog of a lot of his stuff. So, and you get to see kind of what it looked like. But again, you know, the wood itself, like I said, is quarter sawn oak. And I wish, well, you can actually. Yay. Okay. Let's see if we can blow that up. Well, come on, up. If you look at the pattern in the wood, see, it gets what they call these sunburst or rays in it. And it's because of the way that they cut the log, which is called quarter sawn. And it actually brings out that pattern in the oak.
But it's just from a regular oak tree, but it's the way that they cut it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah. You've got to cut it out of the main trunk, and then you've got to saw the trunk in a certain way so that you begin to bring out the angles, you know, of all these different patterns in the wood. And that's what they call quarter sawn. And you can buy, let's say if you can buy like 6 foot long by say 10 or 12 inch wide board of oak for around about $40. If it's quarter sawn, it's going to be more like 70, because it's a lot more work at the mill to try to cut it, you know, to get that grain out of it. So it's a little more expensive. But
This looks like a Roman chair.
Yeah.
More doing, you know, Roman period.
Yeah. But the thing about, you know, quarter sawn is that the wood is much more solid, and it's, okay, so how do we get out of here? Yeah. And it will last. It doesn't check and split the way that a lot of regular oak would do over time.
About this chair, I like it because for old people, it's easier to get up because it has those on the side.
Yeah. Well, see, it can be, you know, beautiful design and functional too.
Yeah.
And maybe he had that in mind, you know, maybe he had you in mind for that chair.
Mm-hmm.
You know, well, I don't know this guy, but, you know, Armando might need that chair in about, you know,
Yep.
80 or 100 years. So.
Well, it's definitely healthier because, you know, what they use now for furniture is laminate, and that's chemicals, which causes other things in the body. So.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I can tell you about arts and crafts furniture is that if you ever pick it up, it's a workout, because it's heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was one of the main complaints of one of my ex-partners. You know, when we split up, that's the thing. She said, you know, it's like everything you have is heavy. You know? Okay. You know.
But that's the truth. When I was younger, I used to buy all the antique furniture, so heavy.
Yeah.
And now I don't care if I just get real light stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Stuff I can carry myself.
Oh goodness.
But like this little table right here, that, you know, that thing probably weighs, you know, a good 70 or 80 pounds. So
yeah.
You have to keep a dolly in your house and lean it in and then roll it.
I said, when I moved out of my house, I said, I'll never buy another piece of heavy furniture.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Yeah. But, you know, what I was talking about, what they call mortise and tenon, it's like this piece of wood, see, runs and it goes through an opening in this upright right here. It goes all the way through. And then this piece of wood is a pin that fits down in it and locks it in place. And they've got one of these on each side. And so that's what keeps that whole table stable, is that the way that they're pinned together. And here at the top, they've used a dowel, see, which is nothing more than a wooden, like, round stick. And it's basically a pin. You know, there's a hole in there, and they've just, you know, hammered that in to lock this piece of wood and this piece of wood together. Okay. And so, you know, furniture built that way will never come apart. I mean, it will be around forever. If you put a metal screw or something in there, it will hold it for a long time. But eventually, because the metal can deteriorate and weaken, you know, that joint's going to break. This way, yeah, you're never going to be able to take that table apart, ever. So it's kind of interesting stuff. Anyway, so yeah, I've got one of these, a drop front desk.
I see those, yes.
I remember those.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really functional. You know, this drops down.
Yeah.
They may have it open, a picture of it open. I don't know whether they do or not.
No, it has some piece of wood on the side that you pull them out. Oh.
Yeah. Well, you see, it opens up, and then the drawer that's under there, you just pull out, and it keeps
Yeah, and hold it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I've got one of those downstairs.
How much does it weigh?
About 200 pounds.
Just clean it up real nice and put it on the main floor so
yeah,
everybody can enjoy it.
Yeah, it is. It's
and ask you questions.
Yeah, it's in the
Right.
dining room, and that's kind of where I sit and pay bills and, you know, do all that stuff. So, but yeah, that's actually one of my favorite pieces of furniture, that drop front desk. Anyway. Let's see.
Something about those furnitures, because I have one old piece of furniture. When it came apart, I noticed they didn't have no nails,
Right.
no screw.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. You know, when they made furniture a long time ago, you know, they didn't have a lot of nails and screws available. Those had to be made by a blacksmith. And so, you know, when they were building furniture around about the time of the Renaissance, it was all, you know, mortise and tenon and you know, put together with dowels. So, yeah, like this little, you know, side table. Yeah. Again, you know, these pieces sit in, but there's, you know, there's a tenon that runs through here on both sides for this to sit on. And it locks everything together. You can see the pin here and you can see the pins here. But that's the way they used to make furniture a long time ago, and it lasts forever. It's a really, really long time. Anyway, so anybody got any thoughts so far about what we saw, arts and crafts movement type stuff? Anybody like Rolf's work?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's you know, it's unusual stuff. You know, probably not easy to live with in all cases, but you know, but really, really, you know, beautiful stuff. So, all right. So anyway, that's your introduction to arts and crafts. Okay, we're gonna look at some more arts and crafts stuff next week, and I'm gonna try to take a lot of the arts and crafts movement and show you artists who have been influenced by that in their work. You know, basically from about 1900 all the way up to today. Because again, you know, this is one of those art movements that you know, it keeps influencing people, you know, over time. And it's pretty important, you know, to begin to understand a little bit about what it was all about and some of the principles behind it. So,
Is Scandinavian style in this movement?
no, Scandinavian came. That's part of the modern art movement.
Okay.
But in a sense, if you look at some of the lines in Scandinavian furniture, it took it basically directly off of like Rennie Mackintosh. And
Yes, I thought of right. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something you have to keep in mind. Is really from the arts and crafts period forward. It's like, you know, arts and crafts has some influence on all of it. You know, including how our movie theaters and things were designed in Art Deco, and even today, as well as, you know, like transportation, like cars, things like that. A lot of those lines and things like that, you know, that you would find in arts and crafts, you'll find, you know, in modern design. You know, look at your, you know, if you look at your laptop today, you know, any idea why you don't have round or square corners on your laptop?
So you don't injure yourself when you know, your hand runs by it or your arm runs by it.
Yeah.
So it's safe to have a rounded edge.
Right. Yeah. But also, and that's something that they did in the arts and crafts movement, is round those corners so that if it bumped into something or whatever, you know, it would absorb the shock and you wouldn't damage it. And the same thing is true with your computer and everything else. If you bump it or if you drop it or something and it hits the corner, yeah, probably not going to damage it, because that corner is actually pretty strong. If it came to a sharp point, you might get a big dent there.
That's interesting. Yeah, looking at my computer there, it is round. My desktop and my laptop.
Yeah, same thing is true, you know, in most modern things. You won't find a sharp corner, you know, and the reason being that the radius, that curve in there, is actually stronger for an impact, wear and tear than if you had a sharp corner. If you had a sharp corner there and it hit something, you might get a big chunk out of it. You know, it might break off because how it hits, the force, you know, would be strong enough that it might actually damage it. So, but that was an arts and crafts, you know, design principle. So, like I said, you know, we live with it every day. We don't recognize it, you know, or really see it for what it is. But, you know, it's influenced, you know, so many aspects of our life every day. So, anyway. Anybody got anything we need to talk about before we go away?
I found an artist. I saw her work yesterday and I thought it was so unusual. Her name is Scott, Iris Scott.
Okay. So what about her?
Some of her like flowers, she uses her fingers to paint with it, you know, reading under the pictures. She uses her fingers a lot. And then a lot of it was water art. You know, everything was not everything, but almost everything looked like it was underwater or in water. It's very pretty, colorful.
Yeah. So do me a favor. Send me an email, and if you have a link to her work, wherever you found it, send that as well, and I'll take a look at it. Okay.
Okay.
And maybe we'll talk about it, Erin.
Oh, good.
What was her name again?
Iris.
IRIS?
Uh-huh.
Then SCOTT?
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
Okay. Yeah.
That's probably why she paints flowers. Her name is Iris.
You think that had something to do with it?
Well, she did a lot of fish too. A lot of fish. Anything that swims.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll give her a look. Okay.
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 Bye-bye.
Anybody else?
Bye-bye.
Bye, Armando. Enjoy lunch. All right. On that happy note, I guess we will see each other tomorrow afternoon at about 2:00, right?
Right.
Okay. And did you have any trouble with that link, Jacqueline?
Oh, thank you so much. No trouble. No trouble at all today.
Okay.
Now I just have to figure out how to save it so I won't accidentally.
Yeah. Well, don't worry about it, because if that works, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to resend that email, that original email I sent out to you with all the links. And so just keep that somewhere, you know,
okay,
that you can get to it. That way you'll have all the appropriate links throughout the week. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay. And it's good seeing your smiling face here. So,
good to be back.
Okay. All right. All right, everybody. Well, go enjoy lunch, and we'll see you tomorrow about 2:00. Okay.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Charles.
You're welcome.